Hello everyone, I'm Aaron from DataStax, and in this video I'm going to take you through building and deploying a Cassandra-based application on top of Amazon ECS or Elastic Container Services. Alright, let's go! Alright everyone, so in our last video we had our new DSE cluster called Moving Pictures, just like this. On the Kubernetes side of things, when we go ahead and do a list of our services, you'll see that we have, like SQL Shell, and for the data API. The data API is the one that we're going to work with today. In the last video, at the end of it, we actually did work with the data API as well too. The important part in being able to work with the data API, however, first of all, you need either HCD or DSE in order for that to even be an installable option. But secondly, you need to expose that service as a load balancer. So I've already done this, but I'm going to show you how anyway. So if I run the command kube control expose service, and I want the right here, the moving pictures, spirit of the radio, data API service, and I'm going to say type load balancer, and then we'll do a name, and I'll say the same thing again with just a dash LB on the end to make sure that's unique. I'm going to make sure that's in my project namespace and mission control, so namespace, Aaron's Proj, and then the unique slug on the end, which for me is 5HC6UEXB. All right, and then I want that on port 8181, target port of 8181, just like that. All right. So if I needed to do this, this is the command that I would run right here. But again, I've already run this command, so I'm just going to backspace over all of this. And instead, we'll just do a kube control get service namespace Aaron's Proj. Wow, I keep mistyping the same thing, don't I? And then we want 5HC6UEXB. You can see that the Moving Pictures data API has indeed been exposed as a load balancer. And this is the external DNS entry that I can use on port 8181 to go ahead and reach that. So one thing that I've done here is dropped the load balancer DNS entry up here for some services inside of Postman. Specifically, what we're going to do is create an application that allows us to maintain a data library of music albums. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do a post out to the default key space and the albums collection. And I'm going to do a find filter of band, Pink Floyd, just like that, and we can send that through. And sure enough, we get the Division Bell, Dark Side of the Moon, Pulse, Final Cut, Momentary Lapse of Reason. Yep. We get all of the Pink Floyd albums this way then too. So really creating this was pretty simple. Again, it was just another post call out to that load balancer endpoint with a v1 default key space. And all we really did was just run this create collection command with a name of albums. That's it. And the data API did the rest in terms of creating the table structure, as well as any indexes that go along with it. So we absolutely have all of our data out there, and we're ready to go. Now we need the application. So to build our albums library application, we are just going to use Java, Vaadin, and Spring Boot to build a full stack application. And what we're looking at right here is the code for the main view for Vaadin. And the idea here is that You know, we're going to have a search button, and, you know, we'll show an image of the album, maybe have the title. We'll also have like the year and the name of the band as properties as well. And then we'll have a search field here where we can search by band, you know, to kind of get all albums by band, like I just demonstrated before with the REST calls. We're going to go ahead and instantiate the controller. That's necessary because the front end is going to have to call controller methods. I'm going to have an H1 title up here of Aaron's albums, you know, easy enough. We're going to have our album index as our left nav. And what that's going to do is actually hold like the list of the albums that we can like click on to, you know, cycle through all the different albums and the information. And like I said, we'll have a search bar, and that's it. You know, then we just have kind of some private methods here to go ahead and do things like load the albums, you know, get the album components and build them out. You know, view the album components, and actually this part of it as well builds and pulls in like the file name of the images based on like the band name. So it's pretty simple stuff here. The build search bar, really all that does is you know, it has a click listener that goes ahead and calls that get albums by band method on the controller. So yes, using the Vaadin library, you can see Vaadin is all over this thing. To go ahead and build out a simple front end. Now, if we have a look at the controller, this is where instead of using the DataStax Java driver, we are going to use the DataStax Astra Data API client. This will actually let us work with, you know, like our tables and our key spaces in a document-oriented way where we'll have like namespaces and collections. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, we have our controller, and you know, we're going to actually have that out with a RESTful endpoint of DS albums here. That's actually what we're going to name like kind of the root at the controller level. We're going to pull in two environment variables. So I have this DB application token, and I have this API endpoint environment variable. The API endpoint is pretty simple. It's exactly what we were using inside of Postman, and is really just the you know, the URL of the Data API load balancer. The token, if you remember from the previous video, is compiled by taking like the word Cassandra and then taking the 64-bit encoded versions of the username and the password, all kind of put together in a single string. Anyway, so this has to be an environment variable. For the controller, there are some things that need to happen here. This is where we kind of need to instantiate our client and the API, and actually go ahead and address the collection as well. So, you know, here, let's see, we're using that Data API client import. Why don't I start with that? And we'll just call that client. And I can say that's going to be a new Data API client. And I want to initialize that with the token. Now, additionally, we want the API. And in that case, I'm going to need the database class here. Then I can say DB API, and I want that equal to client dot get database. And yes, we're going to use that API endpoint. I love that auto-filled right there. That's awesome. Okay, and next we're going to create a variable to reference the collection itself. So, you know, we'll just be kind of simple, and, you know, notice that we have a private variable in this class called collection that's of collection of type document. And you notice that that document is also up here as well to be pulled in from the Data API import. So let's initialize that. So we can say collection, because it's already defined as a private variable for the class. And we can just say have that equal DB API, and we want .get collection, and we're just going to use the collection name of albums. And put a semicolon on the end, just like that. There, now our controller is all set and defined. So let's move on. So we have 3 public methods here that we do want to fill out. So we have this, get one album. So get by like album ID as the unique identifier. We have get albums by band that we've used a couple of times already here on the Postman API side. And then we just have one for get all albums. To fill these out, it's really pretty simple. I don't need to do anything fancy with a lot of this data. So really all I need to worry about doing is just retrieving it and then sending it back to the Vaadin front end. So in this case, I'm going to do a return, and I just want to do collection find by ID, and yeah, album ID, just like that. Easy, easy. For this one, find by band, I'm going to do a return, and we want collection dot, and I'm going to just do a simple find here. Now, you'll notice I also have an import here for the DataStax Astra client model filters with the EQ or the equality operator. So essentially what I'm going to do is down here, I'm going to kind of build this out as an expression by saying find equals, and I'm going to want to use the field name of band. All right. And I want to send it the value of the variable band. Basically, the same variable that's sent to this method up here. So really what this is going to do is go through my collection and return all entries that have a band property value of whatever band I'm trying to search by. Easy enough. And really, this is the easiest one of all. Get all albums. I'm just going to do a return collection find, and that's it. This will go ahead and send a find request through without any filter, and it'll just kind of pull everything back. Now, I know you've probably been told, if you worked with Cassandra in the past, that this is the equivalent of a select star from without a where clause, and this probably isn't a good idea. But in our case, where we're not going to have billions and billions of albums or rows of data, you know, a find for everything here with the new storage attached indexes is going to work really well. So I'm not too concerned about that. All right, controller is all done. So now I can go over to my DS albums and I can do run as Java application. Let's go ahead and watch that build out. If I scroll over, oh yeah, look at that. You can see it started out on port 8080. All right, so now I go over here and say localhost 8080. All right, really simple front end here. You know, nothing terribly fancy. But I have a list of albums here that I can kind of scroll through. And, you know, I can click on some of these, and you'll see, yeah, Brothers in Arms. This is by Dire Straits from 1985, and this is the album cover. Well, easy, easy. You know, I can also search by the band name, so I can say, hey, give me all the albums by Rush. And, you know, we can see all the albums that Rush has put out here. So I can look at like Vapor Trails or 2112 or Clockwork Angels, Moving Pictures. All right, so hey, this is working. Next, inside of our Java project on the command line, I'm just going to list this out, and you'll see that I have a Docker file here. So let me go ahead and do a cat Docker file on that. And you can see that in order to build out this Docker file, I'm pulling down the Amazon Corretto image for Java 21. So that's going to be our JDK or JRE. We're going to copy the build of our jar into the Docker project, and essentially we're going to expose port 8080 because we know that that's what you know, Spring and Tomcat like to run on. And then we're going to define our Docker entry point as the command that runs our application, which is just Java jar and then DS albums jar on the end there. That's really all our Docker file is going to have, and quite frankly, that's really all it should need. So what I'm going to do next is to actually build my Docker file into an image. So let's go ahead and say Docker build, and I'm going to tag this as DS albums, and I'm going to put a dot on the end because I want it built like essentially with the contents of this directory. There you go. Oh, and that was fast. You can see it pulled everything down that it needed to. Probably because I had a whole lot of it cached from trying this out a few times. Now, if we jump up to here inside, inside Docker Desktop, you can see that I have this DS albums image that was built right here. All right. So now I'm going to say, hey, let's run this image. I'm going to get a dialog up here with some optional settings, and I'm definitely going to use them. First of all, internally, as you can see, we're exposing port 8080, but of course there are so many things that use port 8080, so I'm just going to go port 9090 here. That way when this runs, it'll expose port 8080 internally as 9090 externally, and there shouldn't be a whole lot of conflicts on that. I'm going to need two environment variables. Now remember, we kind of talked about this. First of all, I'm going to need our DB API endpoint. That has to be a defined variable in the environment for our application to find that endpoint for the data API. And then I'm going to paste in that data API endpoint, just like that. Likewise, we're also going to need the token that we've built as well. So I'm going to have my token there, which is, again, is really just the word Cassandra with my 64-bit encoded username followed by my 64-bit encoded password. And this should be all I need to run a container based on the Docker image that we just built. So let's go ahead and run this. All right, it looks like, so I see it started on 8080. But if you go up here inside of Docker Desktop, you'll see that I have a link here that'll pop open a browser window on localhost 9090. So it's making that translation from 9090 to 9080 in this container. So if I click this, there we go. Localhost 9090, Aaron's albums, piece of cake, right? So now I could go up here and I could say Pink Floyd. Oh, actually, that's right. I have to match case. Pink Floyd. There we go. And we can search. All right. And yeah, we see animals, momentary lapse of reason, wish you were here, dark side of the moon. All right. Hey, this is working great. The only issue, though, is that, as I'm sure you can tell, this is running on my laptop, but our database is running out in Amazon US West 2. So now we need to go ahead and get the image we just built to run as a container out in Amazon's US West 2. So for this next step, we are going to use Amazon's ECR, or Elastic Container Registry. So you can click into that. You actually do have to create a repository here to kind of store all your available images that you can run. I'm going to use this one here, this DataStax reInvent 2024 one, which is what I've been using for our demos that we're going to run at reInvent. However, the important part here is to get this URI. This specifically allows us to link to or to push our images from the command line through the AWS CLI up here to ECR. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that to my clipboard. Next, we need to re-tag our Docker image because right now it's just tagged as DS albums. But in order to get it out into our repository, we have to tag it with our repository URI. So we're going to do Docker And we're going to say tag, and we want to tag DS albums, just like that. And then I'm going to paste that URL there, or URI, and I'm going to do colon and then DS albums on the end of that. Okay, so that's retagging our image. Next, we're going to push that out. So I can do a docker push, and let's go ahead and put our repository URI in there. Oh, it looks like I have to re-log in. If you ever get this message, it's basically just asking you to re-verify your AWS CLI login. So let's see here once. Let's go AWS ECR get login password, and I'm going to say US West 2. And then we want to say docker login AWS password standard in, and then we'll paste our URL. Oh, let's back over that. Yeah, that should be good right there. Let's see what that gets us here. Oh, it didn't like something there. Oh, I see what I did. For this docker login AWS, AWS is actually our username in terms of this command. So let me just do a username, just like that. Hey, there we go. Login succeeded. Now I should be able to up arrow back to my docker push with our repository URI, and oh, that didn't work. How about we do a colon, DS albums on the end. Hey, there we go. Okay, that looks like that was successful. So now if we head back out here and we have a look at our repository, oh, look at that, DS albums right there at the top. Outstanding. Okay, so we have our image out here, and now we just need to be able to use it. So the next step we're going to do is to go to Amazon's ECS, or Elastic Container Service. Likewise here, I have a cluster that's also set up for reInvent 2024. And if I click into here, you can see that, yeah, these are the things that I've put together for our demos. You know, if I want to take a look at one of these, like the Astra Apparel Shopping Assistant here, and go to Configuration and Networking, you'll notice that we have an AWS security group that is attached to this, as well as all of the other running containers inside of our ECS cluster. So if I click into this just to have a look, you can see what we've done here is open some ports so that we can go ahead and reach the containers that are on the other side or connected to these ports. And you'll notice that we have ports for 7860, 8090, 8080, 8100, and that should be okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click on Create New Task Definition. And for task definition family, I'm going to say DS Albums, Aaron. We do want AWS Fargate. For operating system architecture, you have to remember that what you need to pick here is what your image was built on. I have a Mac M2, which is a, an ARM system. So I'm going to pick Linux ARM64. ARM, of course, is short for Advanced Risk Machine. RISC, for those of you scoring at home, is, reduced instruction set computer versus the traditional x86 architecture of CISC, or complex instruction set computer. Anyway, For resources, 1 CPU, 3 gigs of RAM is fine. We don't need to mess with the task execution. Okay, container, we'll just go with DS albums. Actually, for image URI, what I'm going to do is real quick jump back to the ECR, and we'll have a look at DS albums for images, and right here you can see is my image URI. So I am going to copy that, jump back to here, and paste. All right. Now I know when we ran the container on Docker on my local, we ran it on port 9090, but for this one, we're going to stick with 8080. Let's see here. So environment variables. We have a couple we need to add, if you remember. So let's go ahead and create entries for our DB API endpoint, as well as our DB application token. And of course, we're going to paste in our data API load balancer, just like that. And then we're also going to paste in our clusters Cassandra token. There we go. And then we can scroll down. I think the rest of this is all okay. Yep, let's hit create. Let's go back to our ECS cluster. And under services, we're going to do create. All right, so that's going to be on our existing cluster. We're going to use Fargate for that. Yeah, latest platform version. We do want to use a service. We are going to select a task definition family, and we specified DS Albums Aaron as our task definition family. So let's click on that. We only have one version, so revision 1, the latest. And we can just say DS Albums here. So under here on networking, we get to pick our security group down here. Now, this is our default security group for our entire AWS account here. We definitely don't want that. If I go to here and say oh, look at that, AWS reinvent demos. All right, rest of that looks okay. Let's say create. And as you can see, our DS Albums service is indeed defined. We have 0 of 1 tasks running. It is in progress. Okay, our task has elevated status up to running. We have a look at the logs here. Yeah, you can see that it does look like our application is indeed running out there. So, with that in mind, let's have a look. Let's go back here. Oh, yeah, 1 running task. That's good. Have a look at our task. And you can see that we do, in fact, have a public IP address here. So we have our address up here. Let's make sure that is on port 8080. Hey, look at that. We have our albums. No problem. All right. These, yeah, this is working. Look at that. You can search for Rush, Grace Under Pressure, Counterparts. Yeah, this is all good. Hey, there we go. We've now deployed a Cassandra-based application out to Amazon ECS, which of course is using a DSE cluster that was built on Amazon EKS, and it's all running out in US West 2. For more information on DataStax Enterprise, just head out to datastax.com/products/datastax-enterprise. There you can find all the information you need, including downloads and documentation. Thank you and have a great day.